Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. Boy, it's been a wild past few days with this crazy decline that XRP has suffered. I want to talk about this decline and what it means going forward. Are we still near the bull run? Has anything changed? Let's dive in. First off, I want to say that I did not suspect this sharp decline. It wasn't showing in the fractals a big decline, anything like that, which I think is important because it highlights a limit of this type of technical analysis. So while a fractal can give us a road ahead, what it does not tell us, it doesn't tell us the height, the depth, or the timing of today's chart. So whenever a fractal repeats, the timing, the height, and the depth, all that is going to be unique or original to the new iteration of that fractal. So what we see today is that reality of the height, the depth, or the timing being printed on today's chart as it follows the fractal. So how does this look? What is the damage? What is my assessment of this decline? Well, I want to start off by zooming out and looking at the big picture. But before we do that, I want to let you know that we are still near the bull run. And let me explain why that is the case. So this is the macro structure. It's a repetitive structure. For those of you who follow this channel, you know what this is. For those of you who are new, this structure has three main parts. It has a bull run, a decline, and a sideways range-bound time. It then repeats. This sequence of events takes place on different scales. So over here we have it on a much smaller scale. Here's the bull run, here's the decline, and here's the sideways range-bound time. We are currently working through another iteration of it once again. Now, I take this sideways range-bound time and I break it up into three separate fractals. Fractal 1 has two parts, part A where price moves up and it moves back down again, and then part B where it goes flat. Sometimes B arches down. Over here we see how that repeated. In part A, price moved up and moved down, and part B, it went flat. In fractal 2, it has three waves, wave A, wave B, and wave C. Over here we have the three waves, wave A, wave B, and wave C. Look how high C was. This was during the lawsuit ruling. I knew it was going to come down because that's what C does. It's just a wave. However, it's much shorter over here, and that is because the timing, height, and depth will be unique every single time the structure repeats. So it looks different, but it does the same idea. It does the three waves. In fractal 3, over here, price moves up to a peak, it then declines, it then recovers, does a correction before going into the bull run. So this third fractal has played out many times in the past, and every time it looks different, but they always do the same thing. Price moves up to a peak, which is part A, it then declines, which is part B, it then recovers and does that correction. We see that over here. Price moved up to a peak, which is part A, it then declined, which is part B, it then recovered, and now we are doing that correction. After this correction, we will go into the bull run. So just by looking at this, you already know we are near the bull run. This decline is only part of this correction. Now, normally this correction does not go this low, but as the timing, height, and depth are going to be unique over here compared to over here, it has that possibility to go low, which it did. So you could say if this fractal repeats enough, there's going to be an iteration where something like this takes place, and that's what we're seeing today. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This third fractal has been a challenging fractal to track, and the reason why is while it has these basic parts, a peak, a crash, a recovery, a correction before the bull run, how it played out is kind of a challenge. So this one, for instance, has this large move up and move down, which I was calling the great fake out. We were following this one the closest. We had this first bounce, we had the second wave over here. So over here we have that first bounce, we have this second bounce or wave. So the natural thing is to think, well, we likely will have this, but nope, it actually skipped this. What I want to do is I want to copy this entire structure and paste it over here so you can have an idea of what it looks like. Okay, so here we are on today's chart. So this is that fractal, and as you can see, there are many similarities. We have this first part right here on the fractal, which we see here. We have this part on today's chart, which we see over here. Now the timing's a little different on some of this. We do not have this move up and move down, which I called the great fake out, but it does start moving up after that and kind of syncs up with what is happening on the fractal. So what is going on over here? This is where the timing, height, and depth are wreaking havoc on this chart. But once you see past that illusion, it's really the same thing. Timing's a little off, so this peak right here in the fractal is this wave on today's chart. It then moves up to this peak, which we see both on today's chart and the fractal. It then declines, does a bounce on today's chart, which we see in the fractal. It then moves up, and this would likely be over here, something like this. So it has moved up. This pullback right here is what we experienced. Now, I believed a few days ago in my last video we were beyond this. I thought we were in this area right here. But as this has played out, I realized, nope, we are not that far along. We are still in this pullback area right here. Now, there could be a possibility that we're in here, but I would be surprised as of now. I would like to see more evidence to say that we're over here still. It is my belief that we are most likely in this, and what is going to play out next is some iteration of this down here, most likely. Now, how it plays out is a guess. I don't know. With this steep move down, we should expect these potential moves down on the fractal to transpire here in a more potentially aggressive manner, similar to this. That doesn't mean it's going to continue falling. This could take place, and this is speculation, at an angle up like this, or it also could take place going sideways. If it does go sideways, these moves down could be fairly aggressive or look kind of scary, but I'd like to remind you that as of now, we are following this structure. So even if we do have another big pullback, you shouldn't be too worried, because it's just an expression of the timing, height, and depth playing out differently on today's chart, but the basic structure is still playing out. In other words, the sequence of events that take place on this fractal will take place on this fractal. How extreme it is yet to be seen. The angle which it goes is yet to be seen, but what you could probably count on is something similar to this taking place. Now, what happens at the end of this? Bam! It's the bull run, people. So we are close. I'm going to go back and look at some of the previous third range-bound fractals, and I want to show you how before the bull run starts, price kind of gets shaky. It moves way down almost on every single one of these fractals. So over here, we had this aggressive pullback on this third fractal. Let's look at this one over here. So over here in this third fractal, it looks very different. It does the same thing as I've discussed in my previous videos. It moves up to part A, which is the peak. It then crashes, which is part B. And then it does a recovery, does that little correction before going into the bull run. Look how low it drops in this fractal. Now, technically, we're over here. It has never dropped very low in this part of the fractal, but it is possible, and that's what we're experiencing on today's fractal. But my point is, we get some very unstable situations before we go into the bull run. Let's go further back. So this is the next third fractal that takes place before the one we just looked at. This is in February 2017. Well, it starts in September 2016. So price moves up to a peak, which is part A, it then crashes or declines, which is part B. It then moves up, does that little correction before going into the bull run. This took place on a much smaller time frame. Like I said in the beginning, these things can play out on small time frames and large time frames. But look at this nasty wick that takes place. Price in this fractal becomes unpredictable. You can have crazy wicks like this. Let's go further back. Let's go over here. So here we have price. It moves up to a peak, which is part A. It then crashes, which is part B, and then it moves up, does a tiny little correction here before going into the bull run. This one pulls back. It may not look like anything wild, but look in comparison to over here. It is substantial. It challenges that low. It was probably a scary event when it took place. Let's go further back. So now we're at the very beginning of the chart. So here we have price. It moves up to a peak, which is part A. It then crashes, which is part B. It then does that recovery and that small correction before going into the bull run. This one took place on a very small time frame. But this decline, even though it wasn't some crazy low, it did challenge this low over here. So once again, price becomes unpredictable, it becomes unstable. This is the nature of this third fractal. So to think that we were going to get away with just this decline, which was not nice to go through, was in some ways maybe wishful thinking. We, as true to history, have the wild, crazy drop. Now, this time it's happening over here, which, like I said, theoretically, it's possible, given enough of these events playing out, these fractals playing out, you're eventually going to get one that has the drop here. Now, I want to zoom in and show you another fractal that you should be aware of. This is considered recent history. So if you take this structure, copy and paste it, and match it to today's timing, height, and depth, it would look something like this. Let's zoom in a little closer. So as you can see, it does the basic idea. There are some deviations here and there, but let's zoom in even closer. So here we are on a 15-minute candle, and as you can see, it is doing the basic idea. It's following it pretty closely. You can see even the waves as it moves up. Now, I would suggest any move down in this fractal, whether it's here, 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 could potentially be aggressive. It could be much greater than what this fractal is suggesting, just because the fact that we have gone through something like this. Price needs to kind of settle and stabilize a bit. But overall, I would not be surprised if it continues to follow this. Now, the thing with recent history is it can be a really good guide, but the problem is at any point it could stop following. But as of now, I would say that this is most likely going to complete, and here's why. If we were to take this correction right here that we're going through, copy and paste it on today's chart and compare it to this recent history fractal, it would look something like this. So as you can see, it does something similar. It does this bounce right here, and then it eventually starts moving up. Once it gets to here, this is where the bull run starts. If we zoom in even closer, I don't know if it will do this move up like this aggressive move up. I would not be surprised if it did, but then they both have this decline over here. The recent history is much more aggressive. I would be prepared for something like that. It then begins to move up, and I don't know the timing, the height, or the depth of this, but I know we're close. We are close to the bull run, folks. Once it gets here, it's off to the races. So here is that bull run. We are very close, people. We're in this little correction right here. We're getting close to the end of it, I believe, and that's when the bull run will begin once this completes. Speaking of almost completing this fractal and going into the bull run, I have a Patreon page, which is patreon.com/thecharthistorian. And in here, I have a series of videos that deep dives into the coming XRP bull run structure. It's a repetitive structure. There's different parts to it. So If you want to get a head start on the coming bull run, learn what is coming down the pike, these videos can be an aid for you as you navigate the bull run. Most people missed the peak, and I'm not saying that this is going to help you nail the peak, but it's going to give you a roadmap of what these structures look like, how to tell when you're going in one of them, their corrective structures, how to know when you're exiting one of these structures, when you're getting near to a move up that moves up aggressively, when you're getting near the peak. All that is in these videos. So if you find value in that, I welcome you. It's a $5 a month subscription. And the main thing with my Patreon is the Discord that is attached to this site. So I have a Discord where we discuss XRP. People give their thoughts, their opinions, show their charts. We discuss what's going on a day-to-day basis. So I'm active on it. You're welcome to join. Like I said, it's a $5 a month subscription. Anyways, back to the chart. I'm going to end it here. I'm not a financial advisor, so none of this should be considered financial advice. If you found value in this video, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber yet and you would like to see more of this type of technical analysis, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. I'll continue to follow up on this chart as it continues to develop. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.